SnowTrax Television, going strong for 25 years. SnowTrax is sponsored by Ski-Doo Snowmobiles. Experience that Ski-Doo feeling. Yamaha, conquer snow. And by FXR Racing, maximum versatility for all conditions.
Day one of our Reach for the Summit sweepstakes fulfillment was perfect. We got Elliott to the summit of a mountain, and we accomplished exactly what this contest was meant to accomplish. For day two, AJ and I really wanted to show Elliott the type of riding we like to do most.
Typically when we go out and film, we don't get this kind of weather. Luke was feeling good, I was feeling good, Elliott was beyond amped.
We loaded back up, headed back out on the mountain, and Carl had a pretty cool spot picked out for us that day.
I started snowmobiling at a young age, but it was mostly just trail riding, 440s, MXZX. Just this year, I started with the mountain category. Me and some friends went to Togety Pass, Wyoming, and that was my first time ever being in the mountains. I won this trip, and so this is the second time me ever being in the Rocky Mountains.
Like a trailer jungle? Yeah. On the way there, I mean, it's nothing but gorgeous. The mountain ranges and just the vistas. I mean, you're standing up at like 6,000 to 8,000 feet looking out over what seems to be the entire world.
Our one camera guy, Graham, he managed to find a creek.
I pulled out into this one field and nobody had touched it. I end up ripping through, going off this one powder pillow, and I bounce over this deep trough. I didn't look down to see how deep it was, but as I turned back around, I realized that one of our camera guys, Graham, had been following me.
You know, our camera guys are good riders and they can hold their own, and we make them go in places that are, well, they have to go everywhere we go, so that says a lot.
And the sled is completely perfectly just augured right in. What'd you do, hit the brakes?
I was just off to his left, probably about maybe 50 yards, and I actually watched him hit it and go down, and I was like, well, this ain't good.
Graham's, how would you call that? It was a creek performance or was it a flat meadow performance? Hard to say.
So I grabbed my my mountain pack, you know, took everything off, pulled out my shovel, and I thought, all right, you know, we're not gonna pull this thing up because it's just way too picking far down.
I look over the edge and it's like, that sled is 15 feet to the bottom. How do you get this out?
Once we figured out that we could, you know, I could throw this thing down in the bottom of this hole and then maybe carve away at the tunnel that was excavated underneath, which was about 5 feet across and 4.5 feet tall.
We've been looking for the group and they're right here. They're in a hole. I don't know if they're testing snowpack or fishing. We can't decide.
Graham, you did something even these guys have never seen before.
Yeah. And Graham was just standing there, and I think at first he was thinking, wonder if they're just gonna throw snowballs at me on this side of the creek. And the worst part is I think he lost his sandwich, flew out the top of the thing. So now he's gonna starve and he's almost gonna die. So on the 175, I just backed down and built the highway down to the creek, reverse, forward, reverse. They drove it, and AJ drove it actually under a tunnel.
Ripped it out from underneath this tunnel, got it back up on top, and I think probably in about 20 minutes we were done.
It's just amazing to watch these guys work in sync and just click.
It was hilarious. At the end of the day, it was hilarious. No harm, no foul. Something to talk about, and Graham to tell his kids about in the future someday.
Ready?
Thanks, guys. So after we got Graham unstuck, and our goal was to head out and find some kind of another peak in the Alpine or some kind of a bowl, somewhere that we could play around that was, you know, safe, the snowpack was good, and we had some fresh powder. We found this wicked bowl, and it had really nice side hill exposure on both sides, so Elliott could go out and kind of practice his side hilling and really get the feel for what the Ski-Doo sled does over his sled.
As soon as AJ and I rolled up into this field, it was just an endless supply of cool features and possible booters and things to do. So we didn't even waste any time. We just immediately went out and tried to find stuff. And it just became this sort of train of somebody finding something, everybody going and hitting it. Another person taking off, finding something else, everybody going and trying it.
I think we were all reliving a little bit of the old snowcross glory. You know, it was like, if you could build a dream snowcross track, that's where you'd build it, is up in the Alpine with all these different features. Because anything you can think of, your imagination is really the only limiting factor. You can do whatever you want up there.
So riding the Summit 850X for the first time, just about what I expected from a Ski-Doo. Watching the reviews on SnowTrax, kind of knew what I was getting myself into on the snowmobile. And being able to just side hill, climb, was truly impressive. Wide open throttle, up a hill, and just being completely in control. I'd come off a little bit of a heavier sled, and being able to just throw my weight in one side or the other, and it just climbed. Car side to side, doing those beautiful S-turns. The sled just worked.
And he was having a great time. He was getting stuck quite a bit, but I think he was having fun nonetheless. And I think Tony went over and was sort of guiding him a bunch and giving him some really good pointers and helping him through. Elliott was able to do some wicked wheelies and just, I think, really feel how much a light two-stroke sled performs and delivers in the mountains.
I think it's a powerhouse. I come from a turboed sled, and this thing just pulls. It's amazing. I love it. And it's super flickable. Might try to fit it in the baggage claim. Let's see.
Luke and I were doing the exact same thing, feeling the performance of the 850 Summits. We were on free rides, so that was pretty cool. And we found these nice little hip jumps and a couple of big drifted cornice built up areas that we could ramp off of. And he goes and hits something, and then I gotta go and I gotta hit it bigger. Carl and Tony and Rob, everybody kind of joined in and started hitting things.
Watching these guys, I just kind of sat there and just watched all of them just send it. Jump in and doing huge powder hooks, side hill in these huge mountains. Following them on social media is one thing, seeing what they can do in 30-second clips, but actually being there, sitting on the bottom of the hill and just watching these guys do some incredible things. I mean, I could sit there all day and just watch these guys ride.
I had my camera out, so I got some awesome pictures of them jumping, and it seemed like since they're on like rental sleds or something, they were just beating the hell out of those things, so I don't know. Yeah, good riders though. A little bit late on that one, but.
It's a real honor to be able to ride with Carl Kuster. I mean, when Carl Kuster knows your first name and comes up and wants to take you for a ride, I mean, that means a lot, it really does. And I was excited for it, just figuring what can I learn following this guy around. So we took off up the side of the hill, up the side of the mountain, until we finally came to the edge of a pretty serious cornice. I'd say it was probably 18, 20 feet straight down. And I'd never dropped a cornice that big before. I've dropped off the edge of some cornices, but never anything like that. And he didn't even stop. I didn't know where we were. I had to follow him because I had no idea where we were going. So when he dropped off the edge, man, I just figured if he can do it, I can do it. And I launched it.
Carl will get you on, he gets you out of your comfort level. It doesn't matter what kind of riding level ability you have. He puts you in that spot. Oh, you can't back up. Guess you're gonna have to drive off forward.
Actually being here, riding with these guys, I couldn't have asked for anything better. Is more than what I expected. Everything from the hospitality, the food, the equipment, riding areas. I mean, it was just far and beyond what I expected.
I mean, this guy is going to go back with memories that he'll never forget. And he's going to be telling all of his friends and bragging about it.
Elliott's riding, he did good. From a guy who hasn't been in the mountains much, he just manned up, held her pin when we told him to, and it made me realize how much I take for granted the mountains that we're in here, because I'm out here every day, and then you got to realize that it takes years of experience to get to that level.
It was great to see the progression that he'd made over just 2 days of this contest, riding with the group. He went from a good mountain rider, and I was impressed with his abilities, to a much better mountain rider. And I think when he goes back and rides with his buddies at home, they're going to be blown away about how much he learned. I really have to say that my favorite part of this stuff is just watching somebody like him, somebody who's so passionate about snowmobiling, somebody who just loves to be on the snow and just wants to ride a snowmobile, have an experience like that and get to do those things, and seeing the smile on his face, listening to him laugh inside of his helmet.
You having fun yet?
I just knew he was having the time of his life, and I get to live vicariously through that.
It almost reinvigorates my passion each and every time I get to do this, and just makes me that much more excited to go out and swing a leg over a sled and go slay some fresh snow.
So being able to actually come out to this facility, hanging out with Tony, Rob, Carl, the guys from SnowTrax, it was just an absolute treat. It was much more than what I expected, and I cannot thank them enough. Can I win again?
SnowTrax is sponsored by Princess Auto, a unique world of equipment, tools, and more.
There's this strange assumption in the minds of many motorheads that adding a turbo to anything makes it better. And I have to admit, I kind of agree. More power equals more gooder. This season is a big one for turbo fanatics too. Until now, if you wanted a legit 4-stroke turbo, you only had 3 choices: the Yamaha Sidewinder, Arctic Cat 9000, or build your own. Ski-Doo's 2019 release of the Ace 900 Turbo has given spoolheads another option. It's also created a whole new debate. Which turbo is best, Yamaha's 998 or Ski-Doo's 900? Yes, I do get that these two motors don't compete head-to-head. One is 150 horsepower, one is 180 plus horsepower. They're not equals. But you asked the question, and today I intend to not necessarily answer it, but instead provide some insight into what we like and possibly dislike about each. The veteran here is Yamaha's Genesis 998cc triple. It has 4 valves per cylinder and features a pressed forged crank and cast steel exhaust manifold. The turbo itself has a nickel alloy turbine body and is liquid cooled to help keep underhood temps in check. Yamaha's fuel injection system feeds a triple throttle body layout, and it's this system that's responsible for the almost 2-stroke-like throttle response of this motor. There's also an intercooler, of course. The new kid on the block, so to speak, is Ski-Doo's Ace 900 Turbo. It's based on the naturally aspirated Ace 900, but the reality is these two motors are more different than they are the same. The Ace displaces 899 cc's exactly. It has dual overhead cams and breathes through a single throttle body that feeds 3 injectors. The internals of the Ace 900 Turbo have been beefed up with cast pistons, reinforced connecting rods, reinforced crankshaft, and a wider connecting rod bearing. A larger water pump bumps up the cooling through a revised cylinder head, and a new oil pump increases oil flow. A Rotax designed and built small diameter, fast spooling, liquid cooled turbo with a nickel alloy turbine sits directly on top of the 3-into-1 exhaust manifold. Now let's take some time to compare these two motors, and I want to start with how they are mounted in their chassis. A snowmobile isn't just a motor, and it's not just a chassis, it's a combination of both. So how they relate to each other is extremely important. Yamaha's 998 Triple isn't the lightest of these two motors. It also wasn't specifically built to fit in the SRV chassis. The chassis was more built for the engine, but even still, the layout of the motor prevents it from being mounted as low as possible in the chassis. This leaves the single heaviest component of the sled sitting higher than it optimally should be, which results in higher overall center of gravity. Ski-Doo's Ace 900 is definitely the lighter of these two engines, and it was specifically designed and built to fit as low as possible in the Gen 4 chassis. The result is a sled that corners flatter and feels more nimble when things get tight and twisty. Obviously, this doesn't have anything to do with power. Or does it? Actually, it does. Because the Ace motor is mounted so low in the Gen 4 chassis, there simply isn't room for a triple throttle body setup like the Yamaha has. It also requires the single throttle body to be positioned a longer than optimal distance from the intake ports. The result of this setup is a small amount of throttle lag. Some might confuse this feeling with turbo lag, but it isn't, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. Ski-Doo has attempted to minimize this effect by using their drive-by-wire throttle to ramp up the throttle to butterfly ratio inside the throttle body, but it's only minimally effective. On the flip side, the Yamaha's higher engine mounting position leaves more room for triple throttle bodies to be located very close to the intake ports on the engine. And since there's 3 of them, there is absolutely no throttle lag. The Yamaha triple's throttle response is as close to a 2-stroke as any 4-stroke we've ever ridden. On the opposite side of the motor, we find an almost opposite situation. Yamaha's turbo is more traditionally located, farther away from the exhaust ports, a small distance down from the exhaust manifold. This means it takes a small amount of time for the exhaust gases to reach the turbo and for the turbo to begin creating boost. This is what's known as turbo lag. BRP has located the Ace 900's turbo directly on top of the exhaust manifold, which means there's pretty much no time between when the exhaust gases leave the exhaust port to when they reach the turbo, which means there is no turbo lag. You may be wondering which of these two scenarios is the best compromise in a snowmobile application. And in our opinion, having snappy throttle response and a tiny bit of turbo lag is better than a bit of throttle lag but instant boost. Your opinion may vary. The reality is, aside from horsepower, this is what sets these two motors apart the most. Now, if you're going for ultimate top speed, weight and center of gravity probably aren't a huge concern for you, so you're going to take the high horsepower of the Yamaha. If you want a more agile sled on the trail, the lightweight and low center of gravity of the Ski-Doo makes it the better choice. The Ski-Doo is still crazy fast, and it gets up to speed with arm-stretching urgency, but it can't match the outright aggression the Yamaha seems to have when the throttle is pulled all the way open. At the end of the day, they aren't comparable in any other way than how the air gets to the intake, but wondering how they differ in terms of on-trail feel is understandable. Neither is better or worse, they're just different, and they're both great in their own way.
Closed captioning of SnowTrax is sponsored by Triton Trailers, built for adventure.
There's just one name in the sport of snowmobiling that means pretty much just one thing. It's Thundercat, and it unashamedly means baddest, most powerful, most horsepower, but more importantly, fastest down the lake. Let's get this straight right out of the gate. The Thundercat is not a practical snowmobile, not by any description we can think of. The sled has a hugely powerful engine. It produces more power than any moderately demented rider could dream of. It can shred snow, even when studded, past 60 per. The Thundercat does not apologize for this unruly behavior. In fact, the T-Cat and its exclusive owners club are bald-faced proud of their grossly outrageous rides. So what does this mean in 2019? Is there enough different with the Thundercat to bring back the faithful for another copy? Or are we facing the reality of a BNG 2019 T-Cat? We are pleased to report Arctic Cat has made some significant modifications and improvements to the T-Cat for model year 2019. And interestingly, many of the changes are designed to enhance and improve the T-Cat's best feature, lake shredding, speedo exploding, top-end speed. Ask any snowmobile speed run competitor what's the best thing you can do to your sled to get it to run past the C note, and he'll likely tell you, lower your sled's static ride height. Unfortunately, when you drop suspension preload by cutting springs or heating up torsion spring coils, you often end up destroying ride quality. In 2019, Arctic Cat has used dual rate springs up front and on the torque arm shock to lower the front of the T-Cat without negatively impacting ride quality. These new springs and amazing Fox I-Act electric adjustable shocks work effectively to prevent bottoming. The rear arm shock is an I-Act and the rear torsion springs are softened as well. This lowering provides a substantial improvement in aerodynamic drag, allowing the Thundercat to punch a smaller hole in the wind. Combine this with a standard issue free-rolling 137 by 1 inch lug camo shredder. All this adds up to improved traction, less rolling resistance, and less aero drag. All of these improvements come home when you're exercising your T-Cat's speedometer. Oh, and we should mention, there's still the most powerful, formidable, turbocharged engine in the industry under the T-Cat's hood. With a claimed 180 horsepower, and many tuners crow that number is way conservative. You're ready for some serious lake honing. All this tweaking sounds so single-minded, it's okay if you ask whether or not there's any trail-friendly improvements for the 2019 T-Cat. After all, you may have to actually ride to your fave lake for a speed run. Yes, my speed-demented friends, there are some very effective improvements on the new Thundercat which will improve the ride quality of this incredibly potent sled. Fox's new I-Act suspension system features QS3 shocks up front and on the rear arm, which can be tweaked through soft, medium, and hard damping settings on the fly by simply toggling a left switchgear mounted control. So effective are these new shocks, you can actually dial up more compression approaching a crater and receive an immediate damping increase, protecting your backside from an impact. Once you try I-Act, you'll become addicted to its quick reaction and effective performance. An area which required improvement, affecting rider comfort and ergonomic function, was Arctic Cat's age-old handlebar switchgear. It had been rumored that Noah was using the same switches to steer the Ark. In model year 2019, Arctic Cat has fitted most of their sleds with this techy, functional, easy-to-understand series of left-side controls for e-start, reverse, heaters, toggling the digital display, and controlling the I-Act suspension system. The incredibly annoying right side reverse button is finally where it should be on the left side, and the weird kill switch is gone, replaced by one that makes sense. The Thundercat brand is genuinely iconic and among the most easily recognizable monikers in the entire snowmo biz. Cachet associated with Thundercat ownership is substantial. The mere mention you're a Thundercat owner has been known to arouse members of the opposite sex. As a result, you have to ask yourself if you can handle this kind of power, specifically 180 turbocharged and intercooled horses. Frankly, no one really needs this much power. However, Arctic Cat sells every T-Cat they build every single year. You simply cannot generate this kind of powerful aura and respect from your peers, but you can buy it. So don't worry, you'll never wake up to the news that Arctic Cat has introduced an eco-friendly 50 horsepower Thundercat. Your masculinity is safe with a Thundercat between your legs.
SnowTrax has been sponsored by Polaris Snowmobiles, MVRP Power Sports, race-inspired, trail-proven, and by the wide world of Arctic Cat.
If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more content from SnowTrax TV, click the like button and subscribe to the SnowTrax TV YouTube channel.